We're going to now talk about naturalistic teaching, which is the alternative to DTT. This is a broad overview of all naturalistic teaching methods. There's quite a few of them out there. After this, I'm going to talk specifically about 3 different ones. And I have a PowerPoint presentation for each one. They're the most common ones, I think, out there and being utilized today. So odds are your agency is using one of them. So I'll hit at least what most people are using, I think, by talking about all 3. So naturalistic teaching, DTT, there was so many learners had trouble with it, and it would elicit behaviors that I think people kind of came up with this other method. It is a collection of strategies where we're going to do similar learning to DTT, but in a more naturalized setting. Natural teaching emphasizes the child interest and spontaneous interactions, and it's a mixture of teaching and play. Learning happens as life happens. One part that's really important is leveraging what the learner wants or the motivation. So we focus on genuine interests and spontaneous needs, making the learning process engaging and meaningful. Interactions, natural teaching maximizes the learning opportunity. So you're not going to get as many as DTT. DTT maximizes the most possible amount of learning opportunities within a given time frame. This will lower that a little bit. It's not quite as much, but that's still your goal. Your goal is still to maximize learning opportunities within the natural setting. This skill transfers more readily across settings and people, so this also is easier to generalize. DTT is really hard to generalize because you're sitting at a table, you have their full attention, you're using cards, or even if you're using real items like touch head, all those things. But if you go into a doctor's office and the doctor's saying, what hurts? Can you touch your head for me? All those things, it's a totally different setting. And a lot of times they don't generalize the skill. If you teach it within the natural environment, it's more likely to generalize spontaneously. So the core principles is, one, you're waiting for a child to show interest in something. So it is very child initiation focused. So we are always kind of waiting for the child. You're always doing environmental arrangements. It takes a lot of time to get ready for naturalistic teaching. So you're arranging the environments to create your opportunities. You're going to use at least to most support prompting. We're always going to deliver natural reinforcement. We occasionally can add in extra reinforcement, but most of the time it's going to be the natural. And it's really data driven. So we're still going to take that data, have concise embedded session data, and use it to decide what goals we're working on next, and so on. This is the difference between naturalistic and discrete. I found that there could be test questions on this. So it's really good that if you're very clear on these different things. So the setting, typically discrete trials, we're going to have structured table work, and then naturalistic teaching can be anything, but it would be within the snacks, within the play, within the routines. So instruction is teacher-led and naturalistic is learner-led. Reinforcement is often arbitrary with tokens, and then naturalistic is directed related to their request. And then with prompting, we're going to systematically fade discrete, and then naturalistic can be more flexible with prompting. And I feel like I haven't told you exactly what it is. For example, we want to teach touch head, right? We know touching body parts is important, and so we move to the table, we try DTT, the child just doesn't like it. For naturalistic, what I would do in that case is I would get a doctor set and a doll, some doctor toys or vet toys, and I would build some play routines with the dolls, pets, or whatever, where we're going to talk about what hurts and touch the correct body part for what hurts. You're going to build out play with it. Another, something else you could do with that is if you could find toys where you're putting the body parts correctly, little Velcro, something or other. There's a lot of toys to teach body parts. Or Mr. Potato Head, I used to use a lot because you can snap those body parts in. We would build in the prompting of touch head, but if the child touches the doll's head, that would be appropriate. We might say, correct and move it to their head, but we'd be talking all about all the body parts like together within the context of these play scenarios that we created. And so you're arranging the environment in that you're like gathering those toys and trying to see if the child has interest in those toys. And you might want like 3 options, like a doctor set, the Mr. Potato Head, maybe a book, a coloring book of body parts. And you let the child initiate, like, what do you want to use? Like, which of these looks fun to you? And then whatever they naturally move towards, you start working through the prompting and teaching body parts with those items. So it's child choice and control empowers them to guide the activity and communicate needs. You're embedding targets into real activities, so you're integrating teaching into everyday routines of playing, and then you're varying your prompts and reinforcement. It's very flexible, non-systematic support and reinforcers tied to request, and we're using natural consequences. So an example of that is like you're trying to teach touch head, and you would say something along the lines, "Well, the doll's head hurts. She needs to show the doctor. What should she do?" If the child does it correctly, you'd praise them, but you wouldn't give them anything extra, like just the natural environment. That's the natural consequences of play, is maybe a praise or more play. So you're always leveraging real world results. And so with DTT, you're like always giving extra reinforcement. And so what might happen is like when they go to the natural environment where they need to learn this, demonstrate this skill, and they don't get any extra reinforcement, they might lose that skill because they've always expected the extra reinforcement, the little card to play with, the token, whatever it was for DTT. So these are I think I'm going to talk about 4 different ones. So we're going to talk about these different types of teaching. Actually, I think it's 3. I think 2 of these are very similar, so I combined it. So teaching that occurs in a natural, incidental is teaching that occurs within a natural child's environment routine where the adult capitalizes on the child's interest and provides learning opportunities. And so they're all very similar. Like, that's the thing. I've always kind of struggled with these, like they're packaged as completely different programs, but they are very, very similar. And then Malu is teaching that takes place within the child's natural environment using the child's interests and initiates the focus on language. PRT is the one that kind of stands out as a little different. So pivotal responses are these things that lead to greater development in other areas. So you kind of target those pivotal responses. And so, such as motivation, responsiveness to multiple cues. And so it sort of has, I don't want to say built-in goals, but they're real specific areas that you would work on. And you might work on them in other like types of naturalistic teaching. But pivotal response training really pushes these specific skills that you're going to work on with the child. And then natural environment teaching, the most common one, embeds the child's everyday activity routines, allowing the child to practice skills in the context which they will be used. Child initiation engagement. So you want to make sure you're always looking for nonverbal cues like pointing, eye gaze, any signs of communication that they want to like do this, or they want this, or they need something different. Pause to allow the learner time to communicate. This is the major thing I see people do wrong. So many kids have processing issues, and sometimes it takes them a really long time to respond. Giving them the opportunity to respond by just being quiet can change whether they get something correct or not. And so you could think, oh, this child doesn't know this at all. And the second you give them that pause time, you'll see them start actually doing what you're asking or what you're prompting. The pause time is really important. If you have not seen, go look at Bunny, the dog. She talks with the buttons. Her owner will say something like, "Bunny, do you want to go to the park?" or whatever. and Bunny's going to respond with buttons. Bunny takes a really long time to press those buttons. Her owner always waits and gives her the time. Might be so long that we need to eventually work on that latency, but when you're just doing skill acquisition, give them as much time as they need if they need processing time. So always be aware of processing time. Capture both planned and unplanned moments. Use everyday routines and spontaneous opportunities to teach, and reinforce attempts to build confidence. When they make attempts and they're not fully correct, you're still praising and reinforcing that so they feel confident. Provide exactly what the learner requested. Whatever they say, you provide in this scenario. Pair it with vocal praise. And with that, a lot of things, you'll withhold things to get responses. So, for example, do you want to color or paint today? I want to paint. So you move to the paint, but you might withhold the paintbrush. So they request the paintbrush if they're working on asking for what they want and need, which most kids who are not verbally typical, that will be a goal. You withhold the paintbrush so they don't have all the items they need to paint. And so they're going to have to request the paintbrush from you to continue the activity. You want to make sure you're doing things like that. Fade all extra reinforcements. We're really pushing natural in this. And then link reinforcement to real life results. Tie the rewards to actual consequences, not just a generic good job. So data collection in natural context. So a lot of times the data looks a little different. You might just do brief tally sheets or event recordings. You want to track initiation. So we're going to track spontaneous versus prompted initiations. You need to be writing down what your prompting level is because it's less structured than DTT. We need almost more information about what's going on. Otherwise, you might be thinking they're mastering when they're not. And then you're going to record independent responses, document when the learner responded independently without support. And then you're going to review this data regularly. So review the data to adjust. Your role is you might arrange and maintain the teaching environments, get all the toys you might be using, put them in the room in a way that makes sense. Observe actively for the learner's cues and opportunities. So you're monitoring their interests, their communication attempts, and their readiness to learn. You'll implement the prompting, the stimulus. Prompting is helping them. But giving the stimulus is, like touch head, whatever you're working on. Most of the time with these data sheets, I have a list of prompts. I use prompt and stimulus differently. They are different in these contexts. So the stimulus, I have a list of stimulus that I'm working on in this play, in this natural teaching arrangement. I might be working on touch head, say name, touch red, say name, say phone numbers. I'll just have a list of them. They're the programs or goals they're working on. And so you're playing with them and you try to embed like a touch head into the play in a way that makes sense. You might have different things for different prompts, but you'll try to use that prompt and have them respond 5 times throughout the session. And so with DTT, you could do it 30 times easily within 20 minutes. So that's many more learning opportunities, but this is more learning opportunities in more environments that they might see where they need to do that. 5 things you're working on right now throughout your play session with them, but you're still trying to hit them at least 5 times. I always loved doing coloring books for colors because it's the easiest way to do it. You can say, let's color together. Do you want to use the green or the red? So you're always giving them choices, but green or red, make them say it like I want red or I want green. Okay, they know green, like they got green. You can teach them their colors through coloring books, but you're taking data on how many times they said the right color. Implement prompting and reinforcement procedures faithfully, deliver prompts and reinforcers in a way that is consistent, and then collect concise and in-context data. So gather relevant data on the child's progress. And then you want to collaborate to kind of tweak this and make it work. It often requires a lot of tweaking, way more. DTT really, it's always like the same no matter what. You'll just the tweak is they don't want to do it and you'll have to move on. A lot of times you might have trouble pulling in prompts. Some of the prompts you need to work on with them, some of the stimulus that you need to work on with them, it's hard to find a way to embed it. You might need help with that. There's other things. Okay, so we're gonna do deep dive into some of these other modules in these areas, and they're very similar. Some of the content might feel a little similar, but they are considered different packaged programs. We'll talk about each one, not too long, just a little bit. Okay, thank you.